Hello all, welcome to Zarzak Solution. In our last session, we have discussed about the file, and simultaneously in consecutive sessions, we have created three different file like data management, common file, and from today session onwards, we will try to see the different stages of designing the NLP based machine learning models as well as retraining of the model. Let's start with the stage one, that is data pre-processing, or you can say we are preparing the data for our machine learning the model. Now, regarding about the data, already you can see data already we have stored inside the file called rows. Okay, and this is a complete pre-processed data. Okay, so you are familiar about that. Now, next is we will try to create a supporting the files to rerun, and we will try to deploy that one in an MLFlow. First and foremost, hover over to SRC, create a new file, of course, just like we have created in the last session. So here, try to give the name as stage hyphen 01 underscore prepare. Okay, so as I told you, so this is to prepare the data. Okay, so done. Now let's start importing the packages we required. This session can be little lengthy. Please bear with me. First and foremost, we need ARGS parser. Next, we required OS. I'll try to have like this import OS. Okay, import OS. Next, we required shuttle. Import shuttle. Perfect. Next, we require TQDM. TQDM. Okay, TQDM. From yeah, TQDM, import TQDM. Perfect. Next, logging we required, import login. Perfect. Next, YAML also required, YAML. Next, we required random also, random. Okay, I've chosen random. Apart from this, I'm going to import all the files what we have created in the last session, which is available inside SRC utils. And inside utils I have a function method called common, so I'm going to import that. So inside this common I have the file for to read the YAML file and create directories. Let's try to import all those things. Apart from this, from src, inside utils I have created data management. Okay, so data management function. Import inside this I have a process post. Okay, so I'm going to use that process post. Now let's start with stage 1. So I'll try to mention here stage equal to 1. Okay, stage equal to 1, done. Next is let's talk about main file. Obviously you are familiar with this, we need a main file. So as far as main file is concerned, so we start the main file in this format. Next is let's try to import our YAML files, params files, and config file what we have created. For that one, I'll try to create one the object in the name called ARGS parser. Okay, so this is a method. Inside this, I have argument parser. Call this argument parser method. Fine. So far so good. Next, call this argument parser ARGS. Sorry, ARGS. Okay, so inside this there is a method called add argument. So inside this by default I'm going to call my config files like params and as well as a YAML file. For this one hyphen C. Okay, since I'm going to use two files here default, so default first file would be inside config. If you hover over to configs, inside configs I have config, I think config.yaml file. Perfect. So config.yaml file. So this is one file. Again, in the same way, I need another file as well. So another file is params.yaml file. So here config. So I'll try to call this one as params. Okay, params. Next params ka hyphen p I'll try to use. Config ka c I'll try to use. Okay, default params.yaml file. So since params.yaml file is in the main directory, so I'll try to call params.yaml file. So far so good. So I have created two files. Next is parse argument. Let's try to use parsed. I'll try to create one. I'll try to create one object called parse arguments. So args. Okay, inside args, I'll try to call parse argument method. Okay, method done. Next is now onwards, I'll try to use try and catch method. So in try method, login. So login dot info. So I want to send a message like say like this. I will try to have some alignment, styling, etc. So try should be I think like this. Perfect. No, same thing. Fine. Next is once that is done, yeah, it's perfect. Now it's calling. It's aligning. Okay, so for I was checking for errors. Logging again, I want to send and display a message inside using the info. Since inside the file, say stages. Okay, stages. Call stage. I think it is in the capital letter. Okay, stage one. Obviously, it will display stage one started. Stage one started. Let's try to give some fancy symbols, so it should look good while executing. So now I'm going to start my main file. So main config path. Okay, so config path, I think the main should start like this. Config path and equals to parsed arguments. Okay, so parsed argument. And as far as parse argument is concerned, config path parse argument, we have config, right? So config, call that config. Perfect. So in the same way, as far as params path is concerned, I'll try to create one more called params path. So as far as params path is concerned, so again the parse argument, parse args, parse arguments, and yeah, params, perfect. So this is okay. So this works. Next is once that is done, so main file is done. Next login info. Okay, so let me try to have some fancy here, so fancy stages. So here f and I'll try to stage whatever the stage is there. So in our case, stage one has completed. Okay, has completed. Perfect. Okay, so has completed. Next, apart from that, exception. So let's try to use exception. Exception. It should be exception. Exception. Except exception. Except exception. Okay, exception as e uh, login. If any errors, it should display an exception. Okay, it should give me an exception. I'm going to catch that exception inside this e symbol and raise e. This is it. Okay, so this is it, guys. So this is our main function. Now let us try to execute this and let's see whether I'm able to fetch all these things. So far we just created and we have not executed any files. Let's try to execute. To execute, you can make use of src. Obviously, inside src, I have my file called stage 1. Let's try to run. So there is an error here. So obviously maybe because of this. So let's try to run again. Okay. TQDM model is not found. Let me hover over to my requirement.txt. Is there any TQDM? No. TQDM. Fine. Okay. Now let us try to run this. Uh, pip install -r requirement.txt. Okay, and let's try to execute, or let's try to install our TQDM. Now it started installing TQDM. Wait for a minute and let's see whether I'm able to execute this file or not. So till then, we will try to proceed with the definition now. Data pre-processing, not this one. Sorry, cancel it. I think it is in the stage 1. Okay, let me hover over to stage 1 and let's proceed with our definition. So what I will do, after stage 1, I'll just give a space to have a definition. Okay, there is no restriction. You can start from WIF and next you can proceed with the definition. So next definition main, let's try to have a main. Okay, so which is nothing but my this file main. Okay, so main file, definition main. So definition main here call both the path. First is called config path. The another one is our params path. Correct? Params path. Perfect. So both the path I have called. Let me check, is there any error in the, no, so far no. If it's showing an error, so I need to check what is that if error is coming. Okay, so that we will try to see in let this get finished. After that we will try to see what error is. Next is first and foremost, let's try to import our data. Okay, so first let me try to call one object called config. Inside this config I'll try to use read YAML file. Okay, so I have two path here, config path as well as params. I'll try to have one more object called params and read YAML file. Okay, and give params dot YAML path. Perfect. Now apart from this source data, I'll try to call one object called source data config. Okay, inside this config I think we have called source data. Let me hover over to params. Now the main data will start config. This is available inside config path. As far as config path is concerned, it is config path is nothing but my this config file. Fine. So I should hover over to config file now. So let me hover over to configs. Inside configs have this. Okay, this file. I think there is some mistake we have committed. Let me hover over to again source data. Let me try to find the source data. So as far as source data is concerned, have a look. Source file, source data. So this is the source data, right? So let me copy this and hover over to my um, stage 1. So paste it over here. Fine, paste it over here. So as far as config is concerned, config is available inside config path. That's the reason I was facing problem here. So it should be config path is equal to config. So we should mention that, I feel, config path equal to config, no need. Okay, so it will work. It will work. So source data is done. Source data is done. Next, here one more thing I what just now I saw in YAML.file is the name of our source data. As far as source data is concerned, so in source data, corona, not corona. Where is my source data? Let me try to check this. Okay, so let me delete, I mean, sorry, close all these things so that save it. Next we have data processing, save it. Okay, save this also. Config source data, data row. Hover over to data row. So inside this data row, I have a source data. So as far as source data is concerned, it's not uh, data row, data directory, and inside that file is called, it's not corona.csv, it should be train.csv. Okay, train.csv. Perfect. So next is, once source data is done, input data. Let's try to input the data. So I'll try to create one object in the name called input data os dot path. Okay, so path dot join. So I'm going to join both the source data, and inside that source data I have directory, so exact location or exact path of the data. So I'll call source data, which is nothing but my object, and inside this object I have that directory path. Okay, so I have that directory path. So if you hover over to config path, so this is the data directory. Okay, so let me copy this and paste it here. Perfect. Data directory is also over. So apart from data directory, I need a data file also. How we can do this one? So again, you call that object called source data. Inside that source data, I have the file path. Okay, so data file. Perfect. So this is also done. Next, we need to split this. Okay, so to split, I'll try to use split, and let's say params. Okay, params. Next, in params, we have prepared fields. Let me check. In params, let me hover over to params.yaml file. So this is my params.yaml file. So which is very simple, and yeah, split, as far as split is concerned, I have given the split is equal to 30%. So I'll try to make this one as 20%. Okay, so split will be 20% and rest of the things will be 80%. Training will be 80% here. So split params, try to call this prepare. Inside this prepare, obviously I have params ka split. Okay, copy this, paste it here. Done. Next up, after this, after split seed. Okay, so we need to give the speed seed also, and seed is available inside the params. Okay, so inside params I have same thing, prepaid. So inside this prepaid I have called seed. Okay, seed. Perfect. So that is also done. Random seed. Let's try to have random seed. Okay, and call this one as seed. Fine. Next is, after random seed, artifacts. This is also very important. So I'll try to create one object in the name called artifacts. Okay, artifacts. So config. Next is I'll have artifacts. So let me hover over to artifacts. So these are the artifacts I'm going to use in this particular file. Well, next is, once the artifacts are, I have configured artifacts also. Now it's try to prepare the data. So prepare data. I'll create one more object in the name called prepare data. So directory path, prepare data directory path. Directory path. Yes. Directory path os dot path. Okay. Next join. Okay. Next join. Next inside this join, I have artifacts. So artifacts, I think this is the artifacts. So inside artifacts, let's try to take all the artifacts one by one. First and foremost, I need artifacts directory. So let me hover over to config. So this is artifact directory. Copy this and paste it here. Similarly, I can call artifacts. So inside this artifacts, again I have prepared data. Let me hover over again to config, and this is prepared data. So as far as prepared data is concerned, if you hover over to data, so inside the data I have the prepared data. Let me try to check here. Okay, so prepared data is here. So we need to work on this. Okay, so exactly the location is not, we have not assigned it. So I'll try to keep this one as a prepared data. So apart from this, since artifacts is also done, now it's time to create a directory. Okay, so to create a directories, I'll try to create directories, create directories. Already we have created the directories. Next, give the parameters. So as far as parameters are concerned, prepared data directory path, prepared data directory path where your prepared files are located. Perfect. Now once prepared directory is over, train data path. Now train data path. Okay, train data path. So as far as train data path is concerned, again the same os dot path dot join. Okay, so os dot path dot join. Next is prepared data directory path. Prepared data directory path. Call that on object. Next artifacts. So I have to call artifacts. So inside this artifacts, call rest artifacts such as train data as well as test data. Okay, so let me hover over to config train data. So train data .csv and test data is having a respective file. Okay, so next train data path is over. Similarly, we have to do it even for uh, testing path also. Let me try to copy this and let me try to paste this one. So this time I'll try to replace this with this object with test data path, and this should be that should be our test data path. Fine, perfect. So let me try to replace this one with the test data path. So both training and testing path is also completed. Next is encoded. So I'll try to use encoded one more object encoded, and I'll go with encode it with UTF-8. 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 Perfect. Next, with open, let's try to put some condition with open. Let's try to put one by one. Input data. First, obviously, input data. Input data already we have called. Next, encoded. Okay, encoding is equal to encoded. Encoded. Next, after encoding, as a f, since it is a width, let's try to have fd in. Already we have created this fd in. Next is with open train data path, train data path called train data path in write mode. Next, encoding, encoding. Okay, should be encoded. Encoding is should be encoded as fd. Sorry, encoded. Okay, uh, as fd out train. Fd out. Okay, fd out train. Fd out train. Fine. Fd out train is already we have called. In the same way, we shall have even for with open uh, for testing also. Okay, with open. Uh, this is for test, I feel. Train data path. Test. Do we have test data path? Yes. So test data path. Next is write mode. Okay, encoding is equal to encoded, okay, as fd out test data path test. Perfect. Done with this also. Test data path. Now process post already we have created this process post fd in. Okay, fd in. Next we have fd out, fd out, fd out, fd out train. Okay, fd out train. Next, obviously fd out test, fd out train. Next, fd out test, fd out test. Okay, next is Python, Python. Okay, Python. Let's try to give some Python and split. Python. Next, split. Perfect. Split. So this is it, guys. Let's try to see whether I'm able to execute this or not. Maybe file is perfect. We should work on this. If everything is fine, then we will be able to execute, or else we will try to rectify this. I'll try to rectify this one in the background, then errors I'll try to explain in the next session. Let's try to run this. So obviously no module named src. Okay, so it's not fetching out src data. So as far as src is concerned, src is available inside this. Okay, so it should be, I think we should call src. No, since this file is inside src, right? Okay, so I think we can go with utils only. Okay, so utils, I'll try to keep this one as utils only. I'll try to rectify. Yes, so there is an invalid syntax called separator equal to str get def. Okay, so this we will try to rectify in our next session, because already it's half an hour. So we will try to I'll try to rectify this again. I'll get back to you. Somehow I'll keep on pushing this the code to the repository. Straight away you can download from this. Get init, git add. Next, git commit hyphen m, stage 1, stage 01. Okay, so next git push hyphen u origin main, run it. It got executed. If I check my git account, let me hover over to my your organization. So inside your organization I have full stack MLOps repository. So here is my NLP, and if I check on stage 1 is updated. Okay, stage 1 is updated. We'll try to rectify this we'll continue in the next session. Thank you very much.